conferência de imprensa com o Noah Rubin, apurado para o quadro principal do Oeiras Open 1. Noah, congratulations.
Thank you.
First time in Portugal, I believe. 2 wins in the qualifying. How are you feeling?
Yeah, not bad. It was a tough week last week. We had 5 days of rain straight, which was absolutely incredible. So I found out that I got into the qualifying of this tournament, which was great. I mean, I haven't been to Lisbon, heard amazing things about it. So to be here with a couple wins now is perfect for me and excited for the main draw.
And what are your thoughts on these first 2 matches in the qualifying? How did you feel on court?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think, my balls weren't going anywhere yesterday. I was kind of hitting the service line over and over again. Felt a little nervous, but managed to come back late in the second set and feel good about that. So to get through that match, and I knew today would be interesting. I mean, he's 41 years old. He's been playing tennis for many years now, so he was going to go for a few more winners and kind of not feel as much pressure because he's coaching a little bit more than he's playing at the moment. But, I held my ground, felt okay, and pushed through.
I saw a little bit yesterday your match against Sebastian Fustel. I saw a passing shot when you do it on a stretch.
Yes.
It seems like you are playing good right now.
Yeah, I like moving, and even though I'm American, I love the red clay. I really do. Disappointing we don't have a lot of red clay in the U.S., but to play on it here, and these courts are really well maintained and really perfectly, almost. Probably even better than the French Open at times. So, to have the opportunity to play here is great, and feeling good right now.
Do you usually practice on clay, green clay?
Green a little bit, but it's completely different than red clay. I mean, it's faster. You can't move on it as well. Here is in much better shape. So, any chance we get to play on red, we can. And even though I'm young, my body hurts when I play on hard court. It really does hurt. So this is easier on the body.
I think Roger Federer once said that it's good for him to play on clay to get in shape for the grass courts. I think you maybe think the same because you were a former Wimbledon champion.
Yeah, I think what clay does very well is you have to produce points. You don't get a lot of free points because it's slower. I mean, it's simple like that. So, it really puts you in a place where you have to produce a point, 5, 6, 7, 8 ball rallies, even more. So it gets you to a point where your shot tolerance is very high, and for every other surface, it really helps.
You've been close to the top 100. Now you're a bit far behind, so struggling to get into the bigger tournaments. What are your goals in the near future, and what are you looking forward to in the next months?
Yeah, I mean, I almost stopped playing last year. I was very close. I mean, if anybody follows me, they know I'm outspoken and I talk a lot about the issues in tennis. So, I was close to stopping, but I knew there was more that I had left in me, and I want to see how far I can take that right now in the next year or so and see what happens. But I'm out here to be top 50 in the world. I want to see if I can, break through the top 100 for the first time, because it was, it's fun at the top of the game, but it was a lot. It was a lot for me, and but now I'm back. I'm playing. I'm ready to go.
Do you think it's easier for you when you were so close to the top of 100, or it's easy for a younger player to get to the stage where you've never been before?
Yeah, I think it's probably easier for somebody that hasn't done it yet. I know it sounds funny, with somebody that has done it, I know how many matches it takes to get there. I know, how well you have to do in a row to get to, top 250, top 200, and so on. And for somebody that is younger, they don't think about anything. When I was 19 years old, when I won my first challenger, I didn't think about anything. I qualified, went through it, 7 matches, and I just played. And that's what happens when you're young. You don't think about everything else that's going on. But as you get older, you start thinking about money. You start thinking about your body and everything, the travel and everything else. And I think that was my difficult situation. Was I wanted to be in New York. My girlfriend's there, my family's there, and I was leaving home and not making any money. And I was still, around 100 in the world. So, there's issues in tennis that I'm trying to fix. But at the same time, I also want to see if I can push myself.
Speaking about that, it's not an easy question, not an easy answer, but what do you think are or should be tennis' biggest priorities right now?
Yeah, I mean, I've brought up so many different issues within tennis. I think after seeing everything that's going on, without a full change in the sport, I think one thing that has to happen is tournaments within the geographic location. which means like, you know, don't force Americans to go outside the US. Don't force, you know, Portuguese, you know, let them stay inside a kind of Spain, Portugal, a few locations there, and then Australia, you know, keep them out there. I think with the travel right now, it makes it so much tougher on the players. It makes it more expensive. And we see the issues, whether it's pandemic or wars that are taking place. It makes it very tough on players to force them to go out and be away from home. So, you know, every other sport, you're kind of in that, you know, it somewhere near home. And I think that would, you know, save a lot of players money and the heartache of traveling around the world. So.
But even as a player from the States, you felt that before the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, before the pandemic, I mean, you know, it was difficult when we're looking at tournaments in Australia and, you know, they have, let's say, 2 or 3 times the amount of tournaments we have in the U.S., but, you know, it's not that easy for us to get to Australia or Europe. You know, you can travel right within Europe, and each one, you know, each country is like a state, you know, for the United States. And they have, you know, tournaments in Italy and Spain and Portugal and here. And in the U.S., we may have a couple, you know, and, you know, we should have far more than we have. So it's been a difficult situation to see that. And I wish, you know, we can have kind of a European tour, an Australian tour, an Asia maybe combined, and then the U.S. North America tour. So, you know, it's something that I think could actually save a lot of players from having to travel around the world like this.
But maybe I get it wrong, but it's not mainly problem from US than from the ATP Challenger Tour. The fact that you haven't played tournaments in your country, it's not a problem for the US itself, not from the
yeah, I
ATP
mean,
Challenger Tour.
you know, maybe not before the pandemic, but now it's a huge deal. We haven't had any tournaments this year. You know, we had 2 challengers, I think, so far. There were a couple, I think there was 2 months that we didn't have a challenger or an ITF 25K within that. I mean, US is a big continent, you know, we should have the opportunity to have more tournaments, so it's forcing us to travel. You know, obviously the pandemic has calmed down a little bit now, it makes it easier, but, you know, I think there's a lot of things that could be solved if we can play within our own countries, stay there, and then come together for Masters 1000s, keep those the same, and keep the Grand Slams the same.
So it's a bigger problem, not only from the problem from US.
Yeah, no, it's a bigger issue. I mean, we see it, and you know, I've seen in Australia as well, where they can go a couple months without really having an event for players from 150 to 400, and they're forced to go to North America, and it's a long travel ways, especially during a pandemic.
Because in Portugal and Italy we have many tournaments.
You guys are lucky. Yeah, you guys are lucky. And that's the thing. You know, there's a few European countries that you can travel and just go from one to the other. You know, like in Italy has done very well, especially during the pandemic. You know, Portugal has a lot of, you know, futures and challengers now, so, and even ATP events. So it's a good mix here. You don't always get that.
And apart from the scheduling issue, what can you tell us about tennis at the moment?
I just don't think it attracts the younger generation, I think is the biggest problem. You know, I think just little things that can help. You know, we talk about everybody has to be quiet. I think if you bring, let's say somebody has an 8-year-old son and they come and they make a little noise and then the chair umpire says, quiet please, which they always do. I don't think that 8-year-old ever comes back for a tennis match. And then their parents never come back, so we're just missing out on that. So, you know, in Europe, maybe that kid now plays soccer instead of tennis. Well, football, sorry. Football instead of tennis. And then in the U.S., that, you know, that child's going to play basketball or, you know, or American football instead of tennis. So I think we lose a lot of that, and it's not exciting enough. And then we talk about scheduling as well. You know, there's not a lot of not a lot of changes that can happen, but it's difficult. I mean, when I play a match, I played a match today. It's Monday at, you know, 10 a.m. Nobody's coming to watch that. You know, people are working throughout the day, where, you know, comparing it to American football or hockey in the U.S., they always schedule it. You know, you have one game. It happens at 7:30 at night, Monday night or Sunday, whatever it may be, but it's after work. And I think there's a lot of little things like that in tennis, which makes it very tough for fans to be a part of it and to follow it. And also going back to the geographic location, when I go away, people are like, oh, even my close friends are like, oh, you're in Portugal, have fun. But it's tough for them to follow. They don't know where I'm going to next. I'm all over the world. But if I was just in the U.S., it's different. It's easier to follow. And I think that would be the same for a Portuguese player here. If everything was right in Portugal, a lot of the friends and family would follow, I think, a little bit closer.
But don't you think that can also be an advantage to tennis being so different from the other sports? Because in this week we have more than 50 matches, for example, instead of just one if it was hockey or your football.
I think we always thought that for tennis, being as international as it was going to be beneficial. And I think we went past that line of being beneficial and helping us out. I think now it's hurting us. You know, you go on to ATP Challenger Tour or ATP events, and you have one in Estoril, and then you have one in Australia, then you have Challenger here. And it's like, as a fan, you really have to know tennis. To follow it, it's very difficult. And then it's like, wait, that person gets more points for that tournament, and then this person gets less, and then he has to qualify here, but then he's in main draw. And it's like, for a fan, it's really difficult. So I think F1 is a good example. It's very international, but it's really tied down to 22 races or whatever. It keeps it pretty stable and even, so you know they go from this one to this one. Everybody goes together. In tennis, we have so many players, so it's impossible to do that. But you know, it's just too much going on. You know, I think keeping the Masters 1000s and the Grand Slams keeps that international bridge, but I think we really have to keep it inside the country so people can follow.
And I think, speaking out, for example, the prize money, I think we have been an improvement along the years. For example, the first round of the slams, the qualies. Do you think you have a key in that improvement?
Yeah, you don't talk about the slams. The slams it's a different sport. You know, these are individually owned, individually run by federations, USTA, you know, French Tennis Federation, Tennis Australia. Those are always going to improve because these are the top tournaments in the world, and they can do whatever they want in it. If you're looking at challengers, the prize money hasn't changed in 20 years, you know? So you look at stuff like that. I think we've had an issue with tennis that we haven't really marketed the sport very well. We like marketing players. That's our biggest thing, you know, the big three, Serena, you know, Venus, Mira Sharapova, whoever it is. And I think that's why the top of the sport does so well. And that's great. But it hasn't trickled down because we don't market the sport of tennis. And that's why a lot of people don't get excited. Obviously, Europe is different than the U.S. There's more of an excitement for tennis here than in the U.S. But still, I mean, you know, you can go to matches. I remember played Geneva Open ATP, played Fognini in front of, 50 people. You know, we should be getting far more people out for a second round ATP, match. So I think I've seen this too many times now where it's just not bringing in enough fans. It's not exciting enough. And it's also not on TV. I mean, I'm not as accustomed to Europe as US. You can't find tennis on TV in the US. You have to pay extra, and then when you pay extra, you have to pay extra again. And it's like, wait, I need tennis TV plus, and it's like, I can't watch tennis. So it's been a really difficult situation, I think, for the growth of it, and that goes to the prize money as a whole. Because if that 8-year-old is not buying the hot dog, then I'm not getting extra prize money.
Do you think the Netflix series can help, or that's not the solution?
I think, of course. I mean, I don't love the idea of the Netflix series. I don't think it's going to show tennis and what's actually happening. But Netflix is great for anything. I mean, we've seen it in so many. I mean, between F1 was a great example, Drive to Survive. I mean, I don't know if you guys had it here. We had a cheerleading one in the U.S. that bursted out this cheerleading thing competition, and so it's like Netflix can explode things. I think it's beneficial, but I think people also have to know what's actually going on, and I think they're just going to show the top of the sport, obviously.
But when you are on the locker room, for example, do you feel like you have a voice to the players? They know you for fighting for them?
I think so. I think with Behind the Racket and all the work that I've done there I think it's proven to them that I'm not just faking it. I actually do care. I'm a New Yorker and I like talking, and I talk loud sometimes. So, I get that people, it turns them off in some ways. But I think with Behind the Racket was showing that I do care about mental health. And really, the reason why I keep talking about the negative effects is because it affects these players, truly outside of the tennis court. If it was just tennis and they were okay, it's fine. But, a lot of players are dealing with depression and anxiety, and it hurts that there's a lack of financial stability within tennis, but I want to make sure that people know that even at 100 in the world, or 75, 60, or 800, that there's problems in this sport. I mean, we've seen it with Osaka now, and Ash Barty was a great example. He was one that really didn't complain a lot, won 3 slams, and still said that the sport was too physically and mentally demanding. And she didn't love it after a while. So I think that just shows how tough of a sport this is.
What do you think the tours can do to improve that, to get better in mental health issues?
They can care. I don't think, during the pandemic, I spoke to them a lot, about having certain situations, and it took them an extra year and a half to get Headspace, which is, an app for meditation on the phone. It took and then now we have a hotline to call if we need help for suicide prevention and depression, to help you out, and have a psychologist nearby help you. Took too long, and still it's not at the level it should be at. But, we see it time and time again where, I don't think the players are the top priority for the ATP or WTA right now. I don't think they did nearly enough. I mean, I don't know what you guys were doing. I was on my couch for at least 3 months during the pandemic. I think everybody else was as well. This was a perfect time to experiment, to talk, to have conversations. And all they were doing was reacting. They were not being proactive to the situation. So, I spoke about it, and after a lot of time on a phone, on Zoom calls and everything, I figured out pretty quickly that nothing was going to change. And not only that tennis was going to be in a worse place after the pandemic than before, and we're seeing that now, without a doubt.
Do you think these announcements from Naomi, Ash, and even Nick a few days ago on Instagram can do something for it?
I want to say yes, but I don't know yet. ATP and WTA have proven. I've obviously been closer with the ATP, but they've proven time and time again that you need a lot to move that needle, to really push something forward. You need all these players to come together, and you have what Vasek and Djokovic were working on. I've spoken to them a decent amount. Nothing really scares the ATP. They're doing okay. The execs there are making their money, and the players are playing for nickels and dimes. I mean, this is obviously a tough tournament. It's an amazing event here right now, and you have Marbella, another one where you have top 10 players playing it. We're playing for $100, €200, and there's absolutely no care by the ATP to change anything, to make tennis more appealing, to help the players out so they know that there's people there. And I'm not saying that there's not people that don't care, because I've worked with player relations people that really do care. I've worked with people on the Challenger Tour that have worked their butts off to make sure that these events are great. It's just sometimes it's not enough when the guys at the top, they get what they want,
And do you see yourself working in tennis after your career to solve this problem?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a few things. I was working on an alternate tour to kind of compete with the ATP. That's been a very difficult situation during the pandemic, to kind of create other tournaments. I don't think I would find myself within the ATP. I think it would just be too tough to kind of beat it from the inside out. But yeah, 100%. I would see myself little by little affecting some kind of change to make sure the players know that they have help needed. There's more financial support. I think we're 25 years behind all these other sports. I know I have friends in other sports, and it's embarrassing.
But don't you think it's easier to fight inside the ATP or inside the sport?
I don't. And I mean, to some extent, and that's part of the reason, not a big reason, but part of the reason I'm still playing is that's my inside the sport is, I want to get to a point where, I mean, it's no secret, as your ranking gets better, your voice can get louder, so, I knew when I was, I didn't have it, but even when I qualified for Wimbledon right after Behind the Racket got started, my voice was just a little bit louder. So I know that it's possible that if I can get to top 100, top 50, the things that I'm saying can hold a little bit more weight. So, having a job inside ATP, I don't think I can affect enough change, because everything's just a vote, and if it's just one person, it could be difficult. But, I think inside out with the playing, and then everything that I'm doing on the outside to have a little bit more leverage.
But I'm talking mainly because I think when you retire, why it's difficult to fight inside out when you are not playing. I'm talking about when you're retiring.
Yeah, and I think that's a kind of, at the time that, I called it the BTR tour, was this alternate tour where I have all the things I want to see in tennis with clapping and coaching, food, music, all this stuff to make it exciting. I think right now, unless my mind changes, which is possible, I think that's the best way to compete against ATP because, again, I'm just one person. From the inside, I don't think they even want me there to begin with. I'm pretty sure they don't like me already. So I don't know how much change I can really affect from having just, one seat on the board. It's kind of the reason I haven't been on the player council. But we'll see. Well, we never know.
But what is the reception from the top players?
It's difficult. We have two generations of top players right now. We have the young guys that I grew up playing against, that are open to change and seeing it, and then you have the Federer and Nadal that have taken a really big stand of saying that we're not going to say anything. We've done what we had to do. Doesn't matter. We're moving on. So it's a difficult situation to get the top players, and a lot of the top players, besides obviously Novak right now, which I haven't agreed with everything that he's done. A lot of top players are focusing on their game. These are guys that are like, I just want to win Grand Slams, either break records or win my first one, So I think for a lot of them, it's not their top priority to worry about, what's happening with tennis, how is it evolving, how is it moving forward, and also they're making money. So even if they do care, which some of them do, it's not like a survival situation. When I'm talking about it, it's because I don't have any money in my bank account. When, let's say, Medvedev talks about it, he's doing okay right now, so.
Just to finish, I think some years ago you were on the same place in terms of voice to the tennis, comparing to like Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. How do you feel like one of the voices in the tennis, even if you didn't get the top 100 yet?
Yeah, no, it was interesting. Behind the Racket was received very well. I didn't know what it was going to become, but to see kind of the reaction from journalists and fans, it was really amazing. And this is something that means so much to me. But kind of when that top 20 list came out in France, that was, it was a big deal for me. Even if it was, fake or whatever, it just meant a lot to me because it showed that, how hard I worked to kind of get my voice out and to make sure players' voices are heard. People recognize that and L'Equipe recognize that. So I think, to see that reaction was kind of, it was a trophy. In tennis, you don't get many trophies. So for me, this was a trophy for me, and it meant a lot to show that, people are recognizing kind of the hard work I'm putting in.
But it's okay for you, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
To people know you because this and that, and not because a Grand Slam or a title. It's okay for you?
Yeah, I am fighting for top 50, top 100. Do you think I'm fighting for Grand Slam titles right now? I don't know. Probably not right now. So yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm happy with my voice being heard. I'm happy with people enjoying my style of tennis on court. And, if that leads to a second week of a Grand Slam, one day, that would be amazing. And if it doesn't, if I find my way into a top 100, or if maybe I never do. But, I want to make a wave in tennis. I want to make sure that, my voice, which will help other players' voices heard, and that happens and continues to happen and hopefully can enable some change.